as far as this player goes, his name is Connor.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Connor. I'm gonna be just straight up hockey guy right now. Okay. Number one, because I don't know the whole situation. So if it's just like when your dad watches, like I let me back it up. When I was a kid growing up, my dad used to sit at the table and just talk about hockey. My dad never played one game of his life. I didn't have the problem that I didn't perform because my dad thought I was a star. I was a very good player. So it was always, if he said anything about hockey, it was about how great I was all the time and what my future is going to be. And it was always non-stop hockey. And then he'd start cutting up all the other kids and they weren't good enough. And if there's anybody that gave me any competition, he was tell me how much better I was. And all I'm trying to do is eat the shitty piece of chicken that you made me. I just want to eat and let's laugh. We got my family. It's just nice. So kids need a break, man. They love hockey. My son loves hockey. I love hockey. I love the game of hockey, but when someone starts talking to me about hockey, it's not the hockey that I want to talk about. So it's like, you're driving me crazy, right? So as a kid, you just want to you want to be a kid. That's all. So if that's the situation, he just talks hockey and he wants a lot from you and all that stuff. I understand that's a pain in the ass. I do. I understand. And it's really hard to deal with. And maybe it's a conversation you can have. But as far as the performance goes, it's just, in order to be a hockey player, you have to have this thick skin. And it's not even thick skin, actually. It's when you go to play hockey, it actually doesn't matter what anybody actually thinks. So I would just say, what if your dad just put him as he's got a Sarnia Sting jacket on. He scouts for the Sarnia Sting. Does it matter what he thinks of you, or are you going to just go play anyways? So my point is that this is what we talk about all the time about being, as a hockey player, mentally tough as a hockey player. It's what's important right now. When you're on the ice, everybody outside the glass or even on the ice, their opinion doesn't matter. It's you have a job to do, and just go do your job. So if you go and shoot the net and hit the post or you miss the net, and you look at your dad and your dad gives you the furry eyeball, and he loses his mind on it, like, it has nothing to do with how you should play. Inside the 60 minutes of hockey, you have one job to do, is that's to go do your three things, or to play the game the best of your ability and enjoy it. Like, you should be enjoying it. And that's it. I mean, like, it's like a scout could say, well, you're not a great skater. Does that mean, well, if he's at the game, I'm not going to be a good skater, I'm going to worry about it? No. And if your dad happens to walk in the rink or he's at the game and you play better without him there, then that's kind of on you. And I don't mean that like smarten up. I just want you as a hockey player to say, okay, like, the one thing, control the controllables. The one thing I can control is how I play. And if you're thinking, I guess this is the important thing, is if you're on the ice and you're thinking about your dad, and I understand that, like, I'm going even with young guys, that you want your mom and dad to enjoy you play. And I mean, remember being a kid and looking up at the stands when I got a nice goal at my parents, and they'd give me the awesome. And I remember my son playing, and even up until 2 years ago, he'd be taking a face off where we used to watch him play, and he'd look up, and I'd give him, hey buddy, I'd like, come on buddy.
Yep.
And he'd have a smile. Then those are things, but if he's actually engaged in the game, it doesn't matter if I go thumbs up or thumbs down or take my shirt off or whatever. It doesn't matter. Your role is to what's important now is to play the game, and all the other stuff is just distractions. And what's happening is you're letting something creep into your game. And if you there's maybe it could get deeper than that, but that's my first response to that.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna circle back. I think I'll stick on what you were just talking about first, because I had some of this when I was playing too with my dad.
Yep.
And I'll leave it at that. But it was deeper than that. It's hard to get away from. Like, I remember feeling the heat, and just use maybe another example. A kid that I played with, I remember he used to almost every play, you could see him look up and find his dad. And so mentally, when you know that's coming as a little kid, like, that's hard to deal with. So,
I get it.
So one thing that helped me, along with what you said, because at the end of the day, you have to have a thick skin and you got to be able to handle criticism. And if your dad is the source of it, that's really unfortunate, but you got to learn to deal with it anyways, So that's the first thing, is that what you said, I think, is valuable. Like, keep in perspective, like, when you're playing the game, you're just playing the game. It doesn't matter who's watching, if your dad's there, if he's not there. You should try as best you can, and I know it's easy to say, but I was there. I remember the same thing. Try as best you can to just focus on what you're doing. And that's a hard thing. But the other part that helped me out when I was, and I didn't really start to realize it till I was 16. My dad never played a game either, and of organized hockey.
Yep.
And it was a similar kind of feel where I would feel the pressure when he was watching me. And I started to realize when I was older, like, what is his opinion actually worth? So you mentioned, okay, like, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you, really, but there's a degree.
I know.
Right?
I know.
So to me, if you were watching me when I was a kid, that was a big game. If Coach Andy was at one of my games watching, that was important.
I understand.
Because you played, you have all these connections, you train all these really high-end players, all this stuff. That's different than someone watching who's never played. So, like, if after my hockey game, if Grandpa comes up to me and says, "Oh, you played really good," it's like, "Thanks, Grandpa." Like, I don't actually care what you think from a hockey perspective. From a hockey perspective, it doesn't matter that you think I played well.
Yeah.
So one thing I started to realize as I got into my teenage years was my dad didn't play. So when he would give me the mental beatdown after games, I started to think, like, you never played.
Yeah.
How can you criticize the job that I'm doing when you haven't done it before? You don't know what it's like to be out there when you have to play with systems, when you have to play with structure, when I'm supposed to play a certain role. You don't know any of that. If you played like rec league hockey or if you played house league hockey, none of that, even up to some levels of travel now, it's not the same as playing a highly structured, serious game. It's different. And so that was something I started to realize is my dad actually didn't know. So that started to detach some of the emotion that I would feel about it. And I don't know who your dad is. I don't know what the situation is, but maybe that's something that would be helpful for you, is you can start to detach some of that emotion. Like when your dad's getting all fired up and heated up, you can keep in mind he's doing that for him, but maybe he doesn't actually know. So you shouldn't weight that a ton in terms of the hockey performance.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's necessarily helpfful or not, but that was something that's something that helped me.
Because the easy thing to do here, because I know we talked to various age levels and some really high end players listen to this. It's easier to say what I said to a kid that is 18 years old that plays in the WHL, right? He goes, "Oh yeah, just eliminate it. Who cares what dad thinks?" Right? But if you got a Patrick O'Sullivan's dad chasing you around, that's weighing on you.
Yeah,
All of a sudden you take a sip of a water bottle and dad who you don't want to be around is staring at you, giving you that's different. But a 16, 17, 18-year-old who chooses to have this as a profession, or even 14, 15 that chooses to have a real goal, it's really important that you get your head on straight. But when we talk about 8, because this happens, we see it in the lobby here with guys, 8-year-old, 10-year-old that is just playing hockey, and you got dad crazy. Like, kids do want to please their dads and their moms, right. and they have to listen to them, and it's sometimes a little bit harder. And that's I think is more of a talk to a dad.
Yeah.
Like we have to address the dads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really hard because you're right. It's hard to separate. There's probably a point where you can separate. This is hockey. You don't know anything, and where a kid could get emotional when his dad gives him a furry eyeball or changes end to make sure he's hitting the net, or when the dad gives him the, get going, like,
right.
Fuck, no shit.
Yeah.
And the other side note of that, the side note is, as you were talking about that, is my wife. I'm not beating up my wife here, but it's just a simple illustration of what we're talking about. So my son's started off in the OHL at 15 years old. And he's playing a role that is not easy to play. He's very, very physical, very physical. And with physicality comes confrontation, and you just get exhausted. You hit someone hard once, people don't understand. Your body, the air out of your body is gone. Like, there's nothing left in your lungs. When you combine that with a D zone or a hard forecheck where your stops and starts, and you throw 1, 2, 3 checks, and you're trying to perform, like you're moving, you're exhausted. So my wife would say a lot of the times, especially in the first couple months, she goes, his shift seems so short, and she was getting on my nerves about it. Like, and she listens to this, so I'm just being honest. And I would say, he's hitting people. Like, what do you want? She doesn't understand. She never played. She doesn't know what that means. And this is what the dad is like. The dad that has never played, especially at a higher level. Like, I get amazed Why didn't you stop that? Why didn't you hit that? You keep missing the net. Work harder. All these different things that you're giving them, and you have no idea how hard this is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So this was for the dad. It's like, you don't know, man.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go my perspective. I've played, I've coached, and I train, and I'm in very, very, what's my word? I'm in the game. I actually get it. And there's times where I go out loud to my wife and go, oh, that way, rah, rah, rah. Or I'll say something to my son. I don't say bad things to my son, but I try to give it like a backdoor compliment or a backdoor think about it and stuff like that. And I catch myself. Because if you're not right directly in the game, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm involved in the game, as deep as I am in this game, I still don't know anymore because I'm not there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think people really understand what it's like to play against, like, it's not just as easy to grab the puck, go score, and go take the puck from people. It's just not that easy because you're playing against people who are of close to equal talent and skill and desire as you, or more.
Yeah.
So if you're playing actually really high level hockey and you're playing against someone that's 3 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier, this is not an easy battle. Yeah. So Dad, you can't say it.
Yeah.
All you can ask for is effort.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, because we'll get to dads later too, but talking from that perspective, but some of the, even if your dad does know, because that's a different situation too. If your dad did play and he's still crazy dad or still getting in your head on the sidelines, all this stuff still kind of applies, right? It's like, you're not out there, man. You don't know what my coach is telling me to do. You don't know what my job is supposed to be. If like, maybe I was tired today, man, like, piss off. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what we just said, it's not just for dads that don't know. It can go for dads that think they've played as well. You know, because for Connor, maybe his dad did play. I don't know. Or maybe he played some or whatever. So maybe he has a clue. But it's still, this stuff still applies. You know, like you don't know if you're not there. You don't know what the coach is saying. You don't know all this kind of stuff, you know?